Hi, everyone. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about the justification of, you know, Christians justifying, harassing the monks and, all the sorts of justification of historical events that have happened. And really, what is a just war, right? Because justice, there's this big concept in our society, setting things right, um, and understanding like what happens when we're justifying what we do. So the problem with justifying our actions or any belief system is that as humans we always understand our own point of view. We feel justified. We feel justified in our anger, we feel justified in our actions, we feel justified in our words. We feel justified in what we do, right? We might think, hey, it's what they needed to hear, right? Or we think, hey, I need to protect myself. Or when we see something that we disagree with, we may like stand up. We got to stand up for what is right. But many people today would agree that the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan, is evil, right? Um, that part really isn't up for debate. The history of racism and their violence and their terror is very well documented. So, but here's the part that we don't really talk about is that the KKK members did not see themselves as evil. They thought what they were doing was good because they justified it, right? Just like we don't see ourselves clearly. They told themselves that they were like, fighting for their heritage and they were fighting for their pride and they wanted a better future for America. These are all good things, right? And that's how we kind of do what we do. We justify what we do. They wrapped up their hatred in a language of purpose, right? How many times do you do that? They believed that they were doing the right thing, okay? And the problem is we think we're any different, right? That's anger, arrogance. When we think we're different than them, that we're better than them, that's arrogance, right? Justifying harm by claiming it serves some higher good is actually what evil is. That's what evil is, okay? It's fighting for good. Evil is fighting for good, fighting for what's right? And that's really the mindset that I really want to talk about because when many people would never join a group like the KKK. However, many people actually use their system of justification, their system of logic, their reasoning in their own everyday worldview. Maybe not the same words, but they do the justification, they do the logic, they say context, right? They say things like, you need to understand the context. That's justification. Or you have to understand the times, right? That's the same thing, right? Or they'll say, it wasn't really wrong because I had a reason. Or else they'll say, it's complicated. Okay, these are all excuses, right? And look, context matters when you're trying to understand history, when you're trying to learn about history. The problem is once you get into that mindset, you start using it on the present and the future. Whether it's gossip, that's for the greater good, right? I just want to, let people know what she or he did, right? That's still gossip. It's harmful. Justifying or making excuses or any type of reasoning out why you harmed others, this excuse for context, you know, becomes a free pass to excuse cruelty in the present and the future. So when somebody uses that word context, right, it is to avoid accountability for the harm that they're causing in the past to the present. They're doing the same mental gymnastics that allowed harm to grow unchecked in the past. This allows evil to perpetuate in the world, right? This excuse of putting anger into the world, thinking that there's any good that can possibly come of it. And there isn't. There isn't. Okay. And that's the dangerous part. Once you believe your goal or your belief system is righteous enough, you can justify anything. And once you start believing your excuses, there's no limit to how far and how much damage you will do in the world. And that's how ordinary, really good people end up doing very harmful, evil things by using any type of justification, context, reasoning, excuse making. All these ordinarily, these really good people end up doing very evil things. So that's how groups like the KKK, you think that they're horrible people, but actually they convinced themselves that they were the heroes of their own story. And we do the same thing in our own lives. To think any different is very arrogant, whether it's through war or saying hurtful things or gossip or protesting a peace march or being snide or contemptuous, all of these come from that one evil, which is justification. And that's how harm becomes normalized. That's how this violence continues. Not through open malice, but through quiet justification. So when someone says you need to understand the times, what they're really saying is, I don't want to face the harm or the reality of what was done. What they're saying is you need to really understand, what was actually going on. They don't want to admit that it was just the wrong thing to do. Okay? When somebody says you need to understand the context, they're saying I'm more interested in defending the behavior or the belief system than acknowledging the damage and acknowledging that it was evil, period. And that's the trap. Wrongdoing doesn't stop being wrong just because you can explain it. A justification doesn't erase the harm. It only hides it from the person that causes it. And here's the part that really matters for the present and the future. Once you've justified harm once in the past or in a book or whatever, it becomes easier to justify it again, now and in the future. So once you convince yourself that hurting someone was acceptable, it was about the times, your brain will use that same logic the next time, and the next, and the next, and the next. And so violence passes on and on and on and on. And if you think that hurting people back in history before you were here in wars or killing or whatever it was that happened in the past, your brain will use that same logic to defend violence today. And that's how people slide into patterns of cruelty without even realizing it. They're trying to do good because they think they're on the side of good. And that's how harmful worldviews continue and they grow, not because someone wakes up wanting to do damage, but because they've trained themselves that being able to reason it out makes it okay. So when you excuse harm in the past, you give yourself permission to repeat it in the future. And that's exactly why our world is so violent today. That's how the worst chapters in history got written, right? One justified act at a time. And that's how the future will continue to be violent, by justifying it, by explaining it, by understanding it through context. And that's how evil continues. So if you've ever caught yourself defending something harmful with a convenient explanation, pause and ask yourself, am I trying to understand the past or am I trying to excuse it? Am I explaining the actions or am I protecting my ego and my belief systems? Am I able to see the belief system for what it actually is, or am I defending something that should not be defended? Am I learning, or am I laying the groundwork to repeat the same harm again and to spread evil and violence in the world? Because real growth does not come from defending harmful belief systems or actions or pieces of history. Real growth comes from recognizing it for what it is and recognizing what you're doing for who you are, right? Challenging those ideas and admitting it was wrong, period, and choosing something better for the future. And that's how we break the cycle of violence and harm in our society. And that's how we stop repeating those same patterns. And that's how we make good intentions never become a shield for harm again. I hope this is helpful. Please like and subscribe. Thanks.